Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Swami Shri Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupadaya Te Namaha Gurvagyam Shirasi Dhritva Shaktya Swarupine Hare Krishneti Mantrena Paschatya Prachatarine Vishvacharya Prabharjaya Divya Karunya Murtaye Shri Bhagavatam Adurja Gita Jnana Pradayine Gaura Shri Rupa Siddhanta Saraswati Nishevine Radha Krishna Padam Bhoja Bringaya Gurave Namaha Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Vadanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Shri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Sarasvatanam Varam Vandetam Shubhadam Adeka Sharanam Nyasishvaram Shridharam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, thank you everyone for coming.
Gracias a todos por haber venido.
So I'm going to speak on the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Voy a hablar acerca del primer capítulo del Bhagavad Gita.
Almost exactly 10 years ago, I received
Casi exactamente después de 10
some
años
instructions on how to study the first chapter
de haber recibido las
from
instrucciones
my Guru Maharaj, Swami
de
Bhaktivedanta
estudiar este
Tripurari.
capítulo de mi Guru Maharaj,
And
Swami
he gave
Bhaktivedanta
me
Tripurari.
8 points. So I was thinking that throughout this month I'm going to
Entonces a través de este mes
cover them.
voy a cubrir 8 puntos específicamente.
And the first point is,
El primero de estos,
what is the significance of the two
¿cuál es
names for
el
chapter 1?
significado de los dos
So
nombres
the two names for chapter 1 are
para el capítulo 1?
One is Vishada Yoga,
Uno es Vishada
which
Yoga,
is the yoga of despair.
el yoga de la
And
desesperación.
Guru Maharaj makes the point that we are all always
Guru
in
Maharaj
despair, but it
hace
requires
el
some
punto de
sukriti
que
for us to
nosotros
turn
siempre
that
estamos
despair
en desesperación.
into a yoga.
Entonces necesitamos este tipo
There's
de
the
yoga.
verse further on in Bhagavad Gita in 7:14, where it talks about the 4 types of
Más adelante en el
people
Bhagavad
who
Gita,
turn towards
cuando
Krishna.
Krishna habla
And
en el capítulo 14,
4 types of it's actually
habla también de
it's one type of person.
tópico.
It's a person who has sukriti, and people who have sukriti
Cuando alguien tiene
will
sukriti,
surrender to Krishna
cuando se ha rendido
in 4
a
different circumstances. One is when
a
they're suffering,
Krishna de
one is if they
diferentes
desire
formas,
wealth,
cuando
one is
está
if they're
sufriendo,
curious,
cuando tiene
and
curiosidad,
one is if they are in knowledge of the self.
cuando está buscando conocimiento de sí
So
mismo.
one can be in knowledge of the self, one can suffer, one can want wealth, and one can be curious,
El que
but
quiere
without having
buscar riqueza
sukriti.
También pueden
And
alcanzar
then one will not
algún tipo de sukriti
surrender to Krishna in a situation like
al
that.
rendirse a Krishna
But Arjuna
para superar su situación.
is turning to Krishna in his despair. And
Y en este
as has been
momento,
pointed out, we turn to the Bhagavad Gita in our despair, if we are
en este momento
fortunate.
Arjuna se encontraba desesperado.
And so this is like an ancient chapter
Esto es como
title
un título
name for this
antiguo
chapter,
para este
Vishada
capítulo
Yoga. It
número
was
1,
used by
Vishada
the
Yoga,
ancient commentator Sridhar Swami.
hecho por los comentaristas antiguos,
Then
como
Vishwanath
Sridhar
Chakravarti
Swami.
Thakur, who was the
Vishwanath
first in
Chakravarti
our
Thakur,
lineage to give a full commentary on Bhagavad
quien
Gita,
da en nuestra
he
línea un
changed the
primer
name, or he used
comentario
another name
completo
for this chapter, which is
de este
Sainya or
del
Sainya
Bhagavad
Darshana,
Gita, da un nuevo
which
nombre,
is
un nuevo título a
observing
este capítulo.
the armies on the battlefield.
Y
And
es
this is the
observando los
chapter title
batallones
that also Prabhupada is using in
en el
his
campo de batalla.
Bhagavad Gita as it is.
Y es el que
Whereas
utiliza
Guru
Srila
Maharaj, my Guru
Prabhupada
Maharaj,
en
has
su
used
Bhagavad Gita,
gone back to the old one, Vishada Yoga.
mientras que Guru Maharaj vuelve al título antiguo, el Yoga de la
So the Sainya
desesperación.
Darshana name of the chapter, observing the armies on the
Entonces,
battlefield,
el título de Observando los ejércitos en
may
el
refer
campo
both
de
to
batalla puede referir
Duryodhan,
a
how he's
Duryodhana,
observing the armies
quien
and
está observando
comparing them and speaking
ejércitos,
to Bhishma.
y quien está hablando a Bhishma.
And it can also be Arjuna when he
También
sees,
puedes
when
referir
he's
a
observing the armies.
Arjuna, quien está también viendo, observando a los ejércitos.
Next point
El
in
siguiente
studying
punto
the
de
first
este
chapter
estudio,
is
en el
to,
primer
or like the second instruction I got
capítulo,
was to be prepared to give an overview of the entire chapter
es dar
and explain its significance.
una visión general de todo el
And
Bhagavad
the
Gita.
significance is like
El
it's the chapter
significado
that kind of ties, because Bhagavad Gita appears in Mahabharata, as I'm sure
Sabemos que el Bhagavad
you
Gita
know. So the first
aparece en
chapter
el
is kind
Mahabharata.
of
Entonces el primer capítulo,
getting into the setting where Bhagavad Gita is spoken, and then from the second chapter,
viene
Krishna
a
is starting to give
explicar a este contexto en el cual se
instructions.
encuentra el Bhagavad Gita.
Like it is said that Krishna starts speaking in
Dice
the second
que
chapter, but he says a few important words
dice algunas
in the
palabras
first chapter also. He says
importantes
4
en el
words,
Bhagavad Gita,
I
Sri
believe.
Krishna.
And we will get to that. Let's see. But first, I was thinking to just get a view of
dar una
who is
visión,
like when we are reading the text, who is it that is speaking?
analizar quién
Vyasadeva
es
is
que
the
realmente está hablando en este capítulo.
Vyasadeva is the one
Vyasadeva
narrating
es
the
quien
story as a
está
whole, like the whole
narrando
Mahabharata.
esta historia de forma general,
But in this instance
como
here, he is
entendida como el Mahabharata.
he is narrating how
Él está
Sanjaya
narrando
is narrating. So it's
cómo
a narration within a narration.
Sanjaya está también a su vez narrando.
So in the
Es una
first
narración
verse,
dentro de la otra.
It's Vyasadeva narrating
Vyasadeva narra
Dhritarashtra speaking to Sanjaya.
a Dhritarashtra hablando
Dhritarashtra is asking
a
Sanjaya what is
Sanjaya,
happening at Kurukshetra, where
y están hablando
his sons
de
and
lo
the
que está
sons of
sucediendo
Pandu
en
have
Kurukshetra,
assembled to fight.
acerca de la guerra que
In the
está
next verse,
por empezar.
Vyasadeva is still narrating. Sanjaya is speaking to Dhritarashtra,
Sanjaya está hablando
telling him
a
that
Dhritarashtra.
He alludes to the superiority of the Pandavas, and he alludes to Duryodhana's silver-tongued speech that is about to come.
Pandavas.
And I said the wrong name before. Duryodhana is speaking to Dronacharya, not to Bhishma.
Duryodhana en realidad está hablando con
from verses 3 till 11.
Duryodhana con
Duryodhana is speaking
Dronacharya, no con Bhishma.
to his, I think to his general or Dronacharya, praising their own army and
está alabando de cierta forma
saying how,
el
but at the same time,
ejército.
Saying that we will all lay down our lives, which has the kind of deeper meaning that actually they will all die on the battlefield.
y que nosotros
then
tenemos
from
que de alguna forma dejar nuestra
text 12
propia
to
vida en el
20,
campo de
it's
batalla.
Sanjaya speaking to Dhritarashtra about
Entonces Sanjaya está
how
hablando a
how
Dhritarashtra
everyone starts blowing the conches and the
acerca
war is about to begin.
de todas las preocupaciones que se dan en este momento del inicio de la
Then
batalla.
it's Arjuna speaking to Krishna,
Y luego
asking him to
Arjuna empieza a hablar a
move the
Krishna,
chariot so that he can see the two armies.
Y le pide que lleve su carruaje al punto intermedio
Then
entre los dos
Sanjaya speaks
ejércitos.
to Dhritarashtra,
Entonces
narrating
Sanjaya
how
les habla a
Krishna moves the
Dhritarashtra
chariot, and here comes the four words
y aquí
or so in
precisamente
Sanskrit
empiezan
that Krishna
las
says
primeras
into Arjuna.
las primeras
It's
palabras
see all the Kurus assembled here.
Del capítulo.
And this is very important because Guru Maharaj makes the point that like, here's where Krishna is showing Arjuna all of his attachments.
Porque en este momento se está mostrando
this is the point
todos los
of the first
apegos.
chapter. Like Krishna is showing us our attachments. And
Y
Guru Maharaj
Krishna
makes the point
precisamente lo que nos va a mostrar en este capítulo es todos nuestros apegos.
That devotees often
Tiene que ver este capítulo precisamente acerca de eso.
Without actually processing what Krishna is saying there. And then from text 28 to 45, Arjuna speaks to Krishna.
10 al 25,
and that's where he's giving all his reasons for not fighting in the war.
Arjuna da sus razones de por qué no debería pelear.
Sanjaya speaks to Dhritarashtra,
y luego Sanjaya habla a Dhritarashtra
that Arjuna drops his bow.
Como Arjuna
which is a shocking event because Arjuna
tira su arco para no pelear.
The best fighter.
Y es algo muy asombroso porque pues Arjuna es el mejor luchador que hay en el campo de la batalla.
Then the third point is to explain how the entire message of the Gita is found in the first verse.
Como el mensaje del Bhagavad Gita en general está en las primeras palabras del Bhagavad Gita.
You can kind of draw out everything from there, like from the lowest of the low to the highest of the high, like from the
yendo desde lo más bajo hasta el
material attachment to the heights of
desde los
spiritual,
desde los apegos materiales hasta lo más espiritual.
And this is seen. There are several articles written about this. Of course, there is my Guru Maharaj's commentary on the first verse of the Gita, and then Ashram Maharaj wrote an article about that it's on the Harmonist, from selfishness to selfless love.
En el de Harmonist hay un artículo que se titula del egoísmo a la entrega desinteresada. Entonces dice,
Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsava mamaka pandavas chaiva kima kurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu
¿Qué hicieron mis hijos y los
assembling
hijos de
on the
Pandu
religious field of Kurukshetra,
para
eager
estar
to fight?
en este campo religioso con el deseo de luchar?
So what is symbolizing, or what is showing here,
Lo que se está mostrando aquí,
kind of the low point,
el punto bajo,
is the word mam.
Es la palabra mama.
Which, because Dhritarashtra is asking,
porque Dhritarashtra
what
está
did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?
Hicieron mis hijos
as if they are
y los
two
hijos
families,
de Pandu.
But it's actually one family.
De tal forma que está tratando
de
dividir en dos partes lo que es una misma familia a través de su forma de hablar, la forma en la que él se refiere a diferenciando los hijos de Pandu y los hijos propios.
The low point is to,
ese es el punto
bajo, that we identify
que
with this body and we identify as ours what is related to this body.
Con este cuerpo que tenemos, ese cuerpo
But then
físico.
The high point of the verse is that it says Kurukshetra. So the whole
alto
the
del
battle
verso
is played out on Kurukshetra.
Cuando habla de Kurukshetra.
And it's not the first time that Krishna is there.
Y no es la primera vez que Sri Krishna está en este lugar.
Several times, but most notably 50 years before this,
más notablemente 50 años atrás, él estuvo allí, se reunió con las gopis. Entonces la palabra Kurukshetra le trae a los Gaudiya Vaishnavas a la mente un recuerdo especial.
The 82nd chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad
En el segundo capítulo del
the conversation between
canto
Krishna
10
and the gopis there.
Del Srimad Bhagavatam entre Sri Krishna y las gopis.
And then we also have the in-between in this verse here, like how to get from this low point to the high point.
Ir entonces desde este punto
Sanjaya,
bajo hasta el punto alto de Kurukshetra.
Who is speaking to Dhritarashtra, narrating the battle.
Entonces Sanjaya está hablando a Dhritarashtra
so the word Sanjaya means complete victory, and it means complete victory over one's senses.
Sanjaya habla de la victoria completa que se debe tener, y en realidad tiene que ver con cómo vencer a nuestros propios sentidos.
The low point of material attachment to the high point of spiritual perfection.
El punto inicial bajo tiene que ver con nuestros sentidos materiales y que tiene que ir desde este punto hasta lo más alto, que es el punto espiritual.
What I mentioned before, why it's important to study chapter 1.
Es muy importante entonces estudiar el capítulo número 1 del Bhagavad Gita.
The few words of
las primeras y pocas
that Krishna speaks in the first
estas primeras
chapter.
Palabras que habla Sri Krishna en el capítulo.
I'm reading from the Yoga of Dejection.
El yoga de la dejection.
Commenting on this verse, text 25 in the first chapter.
Dejar las cosas a un lado.
Krishna placed the chariot between both armies, and furthermore, directly in front of Bhishma and Drona.
El carro
Though so many other kings were present, he then said, "O Arjuna, behold the Kauravas assembled here." There was no need for him to say this, as Arjuna had already twice declared that he wanted to observe who desired to fight. Krishna's purpose was to lay threadbare Arjuna's attachments, and thus he chose the word Kulun, which indicates his relatives on both sides.
Y él habla de los
Instead of
familiares que se encuentran a ambos lados,
which specifically refers to the sons of Dhritarashtra.
Y habla
By doing this,
de los hijos
he
de
presented
Dhritarashtra,
before Arjuna the two things he was most attached to:
y
his
representa
family
las
members,
cosas que
headed by Bhishma,
a las
and his
cuales
gurus, headed by
Arjuna
Drona.
está más atado,
At this
apegado.
moment, Arjuna was face to face with his attachments.
Arjuna estaba
The
frente a
message
frente
implied
a estos
is that if one wants to be
apegos
with Krishna, one has to
que tenían que
abandon
ver
all
con
attachments
su familia.
unrelated to the Lord. This incident also signifies that the Lord reveals one's attachments.
Este
Bhishma
incidente
was a
significa
lifelong
que
celibate,
el Señor
well
nos
versed in
revela
the
nuestros
intricacies of
propios
varnashram
apegos.
duties.
Estar frente a
He
él
was
nos
a great
revela
fighter
nuestros propios
who could
apegos.
hold off death until he
Arjuna
desired it.
Era un
He was one of the 12 Mahajans, or authorities
Era un
on
luchador que
Dharma,
tenía que
and
llevar
a
a cabo
great
su
devotee
dharma.
of Krishna. Drona was a Brahmana,
Drona
a
era un
sage
brahmana,
and the favorite teacher of Arjuna.
un
He was
sabio
also
y
devoted to
maestro de
Krishna.
Arjuna, y también un
However,
devoto de Arjuna.
since they had
Sin
been
embargo,
seduced by Duryodhana's clever politics, and were on the wrong
se
side,
dejó
they had to
seducir
be
por la
killed.
política de Duryodhana,
Krishna was teaching Arjuna
y
that if he
Krishna
wanted his
estaba
guidance,
enseñando a
if he
Arjuna
wanted him to drive his chariot, he would have to
en el
sever
sentido
his
de
attachment
que
for
él
everyone who
estaba
was on the wrong side.
conduciendo su carruaje, y en ese sentido
Not only
estaba
that,
tratando de
but
dirigir a
Arjuna
Arjuna.
would have to kill them himself. Of the many warriors from the opposing army, Bhishma and Drona were most prominent.
Bhishma y Drona
If they
eran de
could
los
be
más
killed, the rest
importantes
would
guerreros
easily
que
be
se
disposed of, and
encontraban
victory
en
would
el otro
bow
lado
at Arjuna's feet.
de la lucha.
This is why Krishna positioned the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona.
Esta es porque la razón
The primary instruction
de
of
que
the
Krishna
Bhagavad Gita is
sea el
found in
auriga
Krishna's declaration in
de
the final
Arjuna.
chapter. Abandon all other
Tiene que ver
duties and
con
surrender
la
unto me.
declaración que se da
By
en el
this, he
último
does not
capítulo
mean partial surrender like that
de
of Bhishma and
que
Drona,
el alma se tiene que
though
rendir
great personages had
completamente
placed their
a
obligation to
Sri
Duryodhana
Krishna.
before their surrender to Krishna. Krishna does not accept this compromise. He demands complete surrender.
Krishna nunca acepta
Even great stalwarts like Bhishma and Drona had to be
una
killed.
rendición que sea a medias,
Bhishma's favorite
incompleta.
Pandava was Arjuna. If someone is a skilled athlete, he generally likes it
Arjuna
when
era
other junior family members become accomplished
Pandava
athletes.
más famoso y más importante.
Similarly, if one is a talented musician, he
Y
feels
era un
drawn to
guerrero
other
muy
good
talentoso.
musicians in his
Si uno
family,
es un
especially
músico,
when
por
they
ejemplo,
come in his
muy
own
talentoso,
dynasty.
y uno viene de una
Bhishma was
dinastía
an Atirati,
especial
and
para
so was
esto,
Arjuna, and thus they had special affection for each other.
entonces
A great
debería
fighter is
actuar,
especially inclined to other fighters in his family.
debería actuar de esta
Arjuna
manera, aunque él
was
se
the best
encontraba
disciple of
inclinado
Dronacharya, who
hacia
loved Arjuna
los
like his own son.
guerreros que se encontraban a
Drona
ambos lados del
taught
campo.
things to Arjuna that he would not even teach to his son Ashvatthama, such as how to retract a Brahmastra weapon. It is intriguing to note that Drona once made Arjuna take an oath in the presence of his relatives that if Drona would ever oppose him in battle, he should nevertheless fight with full vigor, disregarding that Drona was his teacher.
A los hijos
Such great persons stood before Arjuna while Krishna said, "Behold the Kauravas, O Arjuna." Duryodhana had also told Dronacharya to look at the Pandavas, as he would have to oppose them in battle. But his motive was different. So here, Krishna told Arjuna that he had to kill his greatest attachments. Then he smiled and awaited Arjuna's reaction. This is an intense and significant event, and one should try for a moment to put oneself in Arjuna's place. Imagine your family members and gurus in front of you, and Krishna tells you that if you want to be on his side, you have to kill them. Killing here means giving up attachment to such people or concepts. Coming to spiritual life means that all attachments unrelated to Krishna will be exposed in due course, and everyone has to undergo this trying experience. The same relations or attachments can be viewed independently or in relation to Krishna.
Todas las relaciones que uno tenga y todos los apegos que uno tenga pueden ser vistos de forma independiente o de forma o en relación con Sri Krishna.
The former view is the cause of bondage and is thus to be abandoned by a spiritualist, while the latter leads to progress.
Mientras que
People
la
often
segunda
say
es la
that their
causa de
minds
la
were
liberación.
people often say that their minds were more peaceful before they took to spiritual practice. When they chant or meditate, many nonsensical thoughts plague their minds and make them restless. Why does this happen? These disturbing thoughts came from within, and the more one practices, the more one becomes aware of them. They are lying, hidden in a seed form, and Krishna reveals them to his devotee so he can fight and overcome them. One cannot conquer an unknown enemy. That is an illusion. Krishna is not a magic helper who touches your head and makes you perfect. He makes you fight and earn progress or advancement. He will place your chariot directly in front of your attachments, and you will have to confront them. Actually, if after seeing and recognizing the obstacles, one decides to fight, victory is already assured. It is just a matter of time. Thus, while showing the universal form to Arjuna, Krishna said about the warriors on the field, they are already killed by my arrangement. Just become an instrument in the fight. After identifying the enemy, one has to decide whether or not to fight with them. Arjuna first decided not to fight, and this is generally how people react. Those who decide not to fight cannot progress beyond the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
En este momento, precisamente entonces, Arjuna no puede progresar, dado que él no decide entregarse en las manos de Krishna. Y esto es lo que nos pasa a la mayoría de personas. Nosotros queremos progresar, pero no podemos avanzar. Asimismo, leemos el primer capítulo y muchas de las personas que leen el primer capítulo no pueden progresar más de porque no pueden dejar sus apegos a un lado para atreverse a superar sus apegos. Pero después de que Arjuna elige escuchar realmente a Krishna,
they rationalize their actions, as Arjuna did in the first chapter, and spend their lives posing as spiritualists. They don't progress, however, because true spirituality begins from the second
Arjuna
chapter.
decide dejar sus apegos, entregar su vida en las
For the
manos de
uncommitted
Krishna, puede
practitioner,
avanzar.
running away from the battlefield doesn't generally entail abandoning spiritual life altogether, but rationalizing his attachments and compromising with wrong deeds.
No necesariamente
Externally,
implica
such a
dejar
person
los
seems
apegos,
to be pursuing the path,
apegos.
while internally he seeks
Porque una
various
cosa tiene que ver
routes
con
of escape.
las relaciones externas y otras que tienen que ver con la
This
disposición
type of
interna.
hypocrisy goes
Este tipo de
unnoticed by common
hipocresía
people.
muchas
The
veces
first
no
chapter
es
describes the
notada por
problem
mucha
facing the
gente cuando
candidate and
lee
how he
el
deals
Bhagavad
with
Gita.
it according to the misconceptions he has
Y
heard from
por
various
tanto se crean
sources.
muchas malas
He rationalizes
comprensiones
and even quotes scripture to substantiate his
de lo que es
conclusions.
precisamente el
Even the devil
significado
can do this,
del Bhagavad Gita.
but he will not accept what the Shastra and Krishna say.
Que llegan a no entender y no aceptar lo que el Shastra ni Krishna mismo dicen en el Bhagavad Gita. Y no aceptan, por lo tanto, la solución que Krishna nos da a todos.
At this stage, he accurately portrays those who come to spiritual life with
Así
some
como
determination,
Arjuna
but after a few years of floundering, they again indulge in material comforts, all the while speaking on lofty spiritual topics.
Entonces, así como él decidió no luchar, entonces muchos de nosotros decidimos no avanzar, dado que no entendemos realmente por qué nos apegamos a cuestiones materiales y no aceptamos la instrucción.
This has stuck with me here because
este es un pasaje muy importante porque Guru Maharaj nos ha repetido en muchas de sus conferencias este comentario.
And, it's as Ashram Maharaj was mentioning on his class on Tuesday.
Estuvo mencionando este comentario
Ahamta and Mamata is our anchor in this world.
Ahamta y Mamata.
And it means I-ness and mine-ness. What we consider
lo que yo soy,
what we consider I and what we consider ours. And and the cure for that is to
creo que es mío.
To understand that that I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine.
Y lo que debemos es entender que yo soy Krishna, yo soy una posesión de Krishna.
I also had some thoughts,
y Krishna es algo para mí. Es la última comprensión.
Because I was thinking, what is the point of me
¿cuál es el punto,
speaking all this?
Para mí de hablar
when I have
acerca de todo
attachments
esto.
And speakers with attachments are not going to change
tengo muchos apegos y
very much the hearts of those who listen.
Y las demás personas también tenemos muchos apegos.
But then I thought of
entonces pensé que
the woodcutter whom Vyasadeva is sending to Shukadev to speak some Bhagavatam verses to attract him back to Badarikashram.
Vyasadeva cuando persiguió a su hijo,
hopefully there are some Shukadevs out there that
y él habló el Bhagavatam para que su hijo volviera.
That may have heard this.
Entonces ahí hay un tipo de
I wanted to read Srila Sridhar Maharaj's
Quiero leer a Srila Siddhar Maharaj.
narration of that because it's interesting. It's that story.
Es interesante
I always thought it was in the
historia.
Bhagavatam, the story of the
La
Vyasadeva
historia
and the woodcutter and Shukadev. It's from
de Sukadeva
Brahma
Goswami
Vaivarta Purana in some edition that it's not
en una
available
edición
anymore,
que no
but
es,
Jiva Goswami is
disponible en
quoting
este
it in
momento.
Tattva Sandarbha.
Jiva Goswami en su Tata Sandarbha.
Because Shukadev left home as soon as he was born, and Vyasadeva wanted him to hear the Bhagavatam.
Y Sukadeva fue tras de él. Vyasadeva fue tras de Sukadeva.
Like he knew that Shukadev could only be attracted by something that was higher than
solamente se encuentra atraído por aquellas cuestiones que son o aquellos tópicos o aquellas cuestiones que están por encima de lo trascendental, porque él ya era una persona autorrealizada.
Vyasadeva somehow or other made Shukadev hear some Bhagavatam verses, and then in the oral tradition it has become the story with the woodcutter.
Tradición oral
some people say
de esta narración,
disciples. Vyasadeva sent out his disciples to
algunas versiones dicen que son los discípulos
and hoping that Shukadev would somehow hear them out in the forest somewhere.
Los que iban con él. Y los que le invitaban a
there are also many theories about
hablar
which
sobre estos
Bhagavatam
tópicos
verses,
y no realmente Vyasadeva.
But Srila Sridhar Maharaj has his opinion, and he's repeating it 3 times here, so he really thinks it should be
Él piensa realmente
Canto 10, chapter 1, text
que el
4,
canto 10
that the woodcutter or disciples were reciting.
Acerca de cómo cortar nuestros apegos.
That he was feeling
estaba sintiendo
about Shukadev leaving.
Acerca de Sukadeva.
He was feeling that moksha, the
estaba
Brahma
hablando de moksha, de
has
Brahma
been
Gyan,
given the highest position. Now
como
the
si
higher
fuera
conception that has been
la
given to me by
concepción
Narada
más alta
Muni
que él tenía
must be
en ese
delivered to the
momento,
world by a person whose Brahma Gyan is
y que tenía que
unquestionably
ser
admitted by all the
entregada a
scholars.
todo el mundo por alguien que tuviera ese tipo
So
de
he searched
conocimiento.
for Shukadev.
Entonces él buscó por
Shukadev is the
Sukadeva.
only person who is very widely
Sukadeva era
respected by the
la
so-called
única
liberationists.
persona con esta
This higher
capacidad,
doctrine should be brought to light
esta
through him,
doctrina superior,
and then the position of Bhagavatam will be automatically
tenía que ser
unchallengeable.
entregada solamente por una
So
persona
he
como
hunted
esta,
after
como
Shukadev.
Sukadeva.
He sent a woodsman whose business it was to cut down trees in the jungle and dense
envió
forest,
a
and who made
una
a trade
persona
from that. He told this shloka to that woodcutter.
cuyo trabajo era cortar
Nibrita
árboles.
tarshair upagiya manad bhava shodach chotramano viramat ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajeta vina pasubnat. Wherever you will find a boy like my son, you will try to chant this shloka. You always wander in the dense forest, and my boy is there, roaming hither and thither in the jungle. It is very difficult to trace his whereabouts because he does not stay in one location. Always roaming and wandering.
Los
he lives
movimientos de
on
una persona
only leaves
como
and
esta.
fruits, and he takes water from the river.
Él a veces toma
Suddenly, one
agua
day, this
del
shloka
río.
caught Shukadev's attention.
Y una vez este shloka atrajo la atención de Sukadeva.
Nivrita tar shair upagiya manad bhavo shadach chotra mano biramat ka uttama shloka gunanu vadat puman virajeta vina pasupnat. This big sound with high meaning, where did they get it from? Then after hearing twice, thrice, he approached them.
Entonces,
what do you say?
2 veces, 3 veces cuando,
they again repeated, Nivrita tarshair upagiya
cuando se
manad,
acercaba a él,
who have had all their thirst quenched, satisfied, they come and sing this song.
Entonces empezó a cantar esta canción. Es la medicina para la solución de todos los problemas y que siempre satisface los sentidos y elimina todos los enemigos. Esta canción es muy dulce.
Both the ear and mind are pleased by a high class of joy.
Tanto los oídos como la mente se complacen en ese tipo de sonido y narración.
Who, but a suicide, will keep such a conception of life, such a model ideal of his
conserva este
life at
tipo
a
de
distance?
concepción de la vida.
Only a self-killer can do so. Otherwise, one who is
Solo
wakeful to
alguien
his real interest can never avoid the Uttama
que
Shloka Gunanuvada, the
es
praise
capaz
and prayer of the highest entity,
de
the
eliminar
Lord
todos sus
Absolute.
apegos e incluso su ego
Who
falso,
can keep himself
puede
aloof
entender este
from this
tipo
highest conception of life, which is
de
beyond even
mensaje
moksha?
que entrega incluso algo que está por
Then,
encima
after
del
having a
moksha, de la
glimpse
liberación.
into the meaning of this shloka, this poem of Bhagavatam,
Entonces, en
Shukadev
este
inquired,
poema,
"Where
el
did you obtain this
significado
shloka?
de
At Badarik Ashram?
de
Can you
este
show me the
shloka, cuando lo
place?"
escuchó,
"Yes,
Sukadeva
come."
le preguntó a quien lo estaba
And they
diciendo,
took him to Vyasadev.
¿dónde has
He could
escuchado
recognize, "Oh, this is my father's
poema?
ashram. Vyasadev, my father, requested
Y
me to stay with him, but I did not care for that. I
entonces
ran away to
dijo,
the forest to avoid human society,
mi padre
to avoid
Vyasadeva me
being
dijo
influenced by
que
human
me
society's
pidió que me
designing
quedara con él
attitude.
en la
I
casa,
left
pero yo
it.
preferí
However,
salir al
for the
bosque,
solution I find in this shloka, I cannot but inquire from him."
pero me encuentro atraído por
So he came and
por este
asked his
mensaje, por
father
este
the
sonido.
meaning of the shloka. Srila Vyasadeva then explained according to the angle of vision that Devarshi Narada had recently given him.
Entonces, Vyasadeva explica este significado, el significado de este verso dado por su maestro Sri Narada.
So he heard. So Shukadeva heard from the
Sukadeva escuchó
from the woodcutter, and then he went
del cortador de
directly to
árboles.
Vyasadeva himself, because it is important. Like we may hear something at first from.
Podemos escuchar algo inicialmente.
Like we may pick up a book somewhere or hear from some practitioner about Krishna, but then we need to go to those who have realization.
Pero tenemos que ir,
it's nice how,
para entender este tipo de sonido debemos ir
like if we read
a escucharlo de los labios de alguien que tenga realización.
Bhagavad Gita, and we can meditate on how it's traditionally said to have
acerca
come,
de cómo tradicionalmente
Ganesh writing it down,
es
listening to Vyasadeva speaking.
Ganesha está sentado y escribiendo
is repeating
lo que
what he's hearing
escucha
from Sanjaya, and he was choosing Sanjaya to narrate the story of the Battle of Kurukshetra because he was highly qualified,
esta historia,
because he was without attachment. So you have someone without attachment narrating, and then you have Vyasadeva, who's also without attachment, narrating to Ganesh. And
narrando a alguien como Vyasadeva narrando a Ganesha.
Ganesh also has this deal with Vyasadeva that he can only write down if he understands.
Y él solamente puede escribir.
So even just
Ganesha solo puede escribir si él realmente
like what we are reading
entiende.
Is not just someone who heard something high, but someone who heard it and understood it before they wrote it down also.
Cuando tratamos de escribir o entender algo que es muy alto, muy elevado.
Even more nice to meditate on is that there is said to be a manuscript of Bhagavad Gita in Gauridas Pandit's temple in Ambika Kalna. So when you read the Bhagavad Gita text, you can meditate that you have that copy in front of you, that it's Mahaprabhu's own handwriting.
Por ejemplo, cuando tenemos una copia original de un Pandava,
okay,
podemos percibir este
tipo
de vibración que viene de una persona realizada que está comunicando, está transmitiendo este mensaje.
Has had nice experiences reading from the first chapter.
Entonces esta es la experiencia una de las experiencias que podemos tomar del primer capítulo del Bhagavad Gita. Si tienen, creo que voy a dejar por ahora acá, y si tienen preguntas, comentarios, bien los pueden comunicar.
Can you hear me, Syamananda?
Oh, I have to allow people to unmute. How do we do that?
¿Hay alguien hablando en este momento? Haciendo una pregunta.
Mute audio, mute all, stop.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to allow people to unmute, but if anyone wants to comment, no, is there no chat either? Yeah. Okay, otherwise, thank you all for coming and
¿Tienen alguna pregunta para hacerle al Prabhu? Ahí creo que hay una pregunta de una madre que está hablando.
We can't hear you.
So I'm not sure how to...
He has to put English and
mute
original audio.
Okay, if Gurunishta puts English and then mute original audio, I should be able to hear.
Si tienen alguna pregunta, la pueden comunicar por acá.
Actually, he's
la
writing
pueden
here,
comentar a mí.
that he's using his computer and he doesn't know how to do it on this one.
Tell him down there, where is the world?
Están tratando de que los devotos puedan hablar.
Gurunishta? Oh, no, I hear you.
Quitar
It's just one click.
El silencio de los
No,
micrófonos.
thank you for the class. It was nice.
Muchas gracias por la clase. Me gustó mucho aquel punto donde Krishna revela nuestros apegos.
I was wondering if you had any more thoughts on what does that exactly mean? Like Krishna reveals, like say for a sadhaka, like what does that mean? What does it look like in practice?
¿Qué realmente significa eso para mí? Que Krishna revela
that came
mis
up in a Swami call
apegos.
Some weeks ago when someone asked, I think it was maybe Brigo who asked about the 10th
Creo
offense.
que alguien estaba hablando en el pasado acerca
what does it mean that
de la ofensa número 10.
It is an offense to Krishna's name
¿Y cuál
to
es la
maintain
ofensa
material attachments even though one knows the glories of Krishna's name.
De saber las
and
glorias
Guru
del nombre de Sri Krishna y sin embargo cometer algunos pecados o algunas ofensas.
One translation is
con respecto al santo nombre.
very how you say, harsh. That translation is saying
hay una significado, una traducción
that it's an offense to Krishna's name to have attachments even though one has heard the glories of Krishna's name. Whereas the more generous translation is it is an offense to maintain material attachments even though one has understood the glories of Krishna's name. So
incluso cuando comprendemos las glorias del santo nombre o comprendemos las glorias de Krishna mismo.
Saying there how like
Guru Maharaj dice
it will, like in the course of practice, it will become apparent to
algo así como
time after time. Like if something is
algo claro para
if something
uno,
kind of comes up time after time, like this is something I should give up, but then one still maintains that.
Es algo que va a llegar, esa comprensión va a llegar
anartha or
de forma gradual.
Or so, then that is an offense. How it looks
el hecho de que esto sea una ofensa, de que sigamos manteniendo nuestros apegos, aun cuando comprendemos cuál es la grandeza del nombre de Krishna.
I'm trying to think of some example.
Estoy tratando de pensar en algún ejemplo.
Do you think it could be said that the process of chanting is almost like
¿Crees que
the
el
same thing
proceso
as
de,
Krishna pulling up the chariot in front of the armies or something, and then
puede ser
start
entendido
chanting and all this
como,
stuff
como
starts
de la
coming
misma
up?
forma
That's kind of
cuando
what
Krishna
Satyanarayan was saying in
puso
his book, I guess. You sit down and get really
a
uncomfortable
Arjuna
about
en medio de
just
los,
try to meditate or chant. I
de
don't
los
know.
ejércitos.
That just, I've never thought of that.
Nunca había
that
escuchado algo
chapter in that
así
way, but
con
it just
respecto
came
a
to me
esto.
when he was talking about that.
Yes, actually, like now that you say it, I also made that connection from the
Lo que tú
commentary.
dices se puede hacer
Like when he was
una
mentioning
relación con lo
how
que
people often say that they
con lo
feel
que
more disturbed since they
alguna
started
gente
spiritual practice than
dice
before.
que
And
que
I
cuando uno
remember
empieza a practicar más, empiezan a haber más complicaciones de
when
las que
Doyal
uno
Hari was
tenía
going out to
anteriormente.
sell books, going out from Audarya to sell books.
Cuando yo iba
he was saying that it's like telling people that like this book is telling you
cuando un
about
devoto salía a vender
problems that you
libros,
didn't know that you have.
es que cuando sale y vende estos libros es que se da cuenta realmente de qué es lo que está en esos libros. Cuando
if you chant,
encuentras otras personas y
then you
tratas de
become
transmitirles este
distracted
conocimiento.
You'll become distracted from the chanting, and then you can see that as Krishna showing you what it is that keeps you away from.
Cuando tú estás cantando y te sientes distraído de tu canto, es que Krishna te está mostrando el tipo de cosas que hacen que tú estás, que pierdas la atención en eso. Te está mostrando precisamente los apegos que hacen que tú no estés enfocado y pierdas la atención. ¿Algún comentario o pregunta? ¿Alguien más?
Anything they want to share?
O algo que se quieran compartir, comentario.
Mute original audio. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Muchas gracias a todos.
I actually made it to the end of the hour, but that was because I was 10 minutes late also.
Estoy terminando 2 minutos antes de la hora.
I was not sure I would even be able to speak for 15 minutes.
Más tarde.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Syamananda Prabhu ki